Hi, and welcome to another one of my instructional videos for how to play classic electric blues guitar. This lesson is going to be the first in what I hope is to be an epic series to show you the guitar playing that went on behind Sonny Boy Williamson. And I'm talking about Sonny Boy Williamson II, Rice Miller. And in the 50s and 60s he recorded for Chess Records in Chicago, and behind him were two of what I think are the best blues guitar players of the day, Robert Jr. Lockwood and Luther Tucker. There were other guys who played on Sonny Boy's recordings, but these two guys were the main ones. And the beauty of their style was the way that they worked together, and playing bass rhythms and then having leads and fills over the top of it, the combination of those two, and the really extraordinary creativity that these guys showed using what are basically pretty simple licks. So without any further ado, we're going to get into this series. The first episode that you're watching now has to do with playing the bass rhythms. And the bass rhythms are really the foundation of the whole sound if you're trying to get that old school Chicago blues sound. And the Sonny Boy stuff, what I show you, I hope is going to give you a really large vocabulary of things you can play when you're playing with another guitar player, and if you're playing with a harmonica player. And I'm going to just get started, and I'm going to do an episode or a series on fills and chords and pretty much every ingredient that went into those old recordings. Let's start out with the bass rhythms. And one thing that I've learned in listening to this stuff for many weeks now before getting this lesson around is that a lot of these recordings, the guitar players are using a capo, especially the guy playing the bass rhythms. And the capo enables you to play out of a first position E. And I think a lot of guys learn in that position, and then with the capo you can just move that position around and don't have to learn a whole lot more. Plus it provides a better sound in a lot of cases. And so we're going to start out, I'm going to show you the rhythm part for a tune called Don't Start Me Talking, which illustrates what I call Sonny Boy's single string, the single string rhythms going on behind Sonny Boy's harmonica and vocals. I'm going to put my capo on the 3rd fret, which is going to make this a G chord. And so what I'm doing is playing in an E position. So if I didn't have the capo, it would be as though I was playing down here in my E position. So in the key of G, let me show you an example of a rhythm that you'd hear behind a song like Don't Start Me Talking. Stop time, and I'll show you that too. So that kind of bass rhythm, before I show you that in detail and then show you all the variations that you can work into that, the song is in the key of G. Now you could play it up here out of a first position G chord, but listening to the recordings you get a bassier sound, so I really think he's using the capo so he can stick mainly on the 6th and the 5th string, go into the 4th string a little bit. Gives it a bassier sound. And I'll show you some other ideas I have on that. So if I've got an E chord here, the open 6th string is my E. So in playing that rhythm, I'm starting out with the open 6th string. Then I'm going to the 4th fret, which would be the 4th fret from the capo, on the 6th string. And then I'm going to the 2nd fret of the 5th string, to the 4th fret of the 5th string, to the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, of the 4th string rather, so the whole thing. And just taking it all the way back to that 4th fret of the 6th string. Notice how I hesitate after I hit the 1, right on the 1. So he's not doing this. Kind of a pause. that's over the G, which is the 1 chord. Then when he goes to the chord change, I'm going. And what I'm doing is, imagine the A position. So if I'm playing without the capo and I'm playing down here and I'm playing an A chord, it's the same shape pattern, but I'm playing now, this is a C. So the open 5th string, and then almost the same pattern, but I'm going to do something a little different. So it's open, 4th fret of the 5th string, 2nd fret of the 4th string, 4th fret of the 4th string, 5th fret of the 4th string, and then back down. Back to the 1. And then when we get to the 5, this is where, if you listen, to the tune Don't Start Me Talking, he does this really cool bass thing. Something like that. Whoops. It's not exactly, I think that's kind of close to get it exactly right. You can do a lot of variations here, but here's my 2nd fret of the 5th string, which is now my D. It's a D note. If I had the capo off and I played that up here, it would be a B. So the D is my 5 chord. So, and then I'm coming up here to the, what would be the 5th, 6th fret of the 5th string, to the 4th fret of the 4th string, and then I'm bouncing off on what would be the 6th fret of the 4th and the 5th string. So watch. So I'm really bouncing up and down a lot on that 4th string. One more time. And then winding up back here on the 6th fret of the 5th string. So this is my 5 chord, my D. Pause. And then we go to the 4, back to the 4. So it's like, so just like we were doing before on the 3rd, 4th fret of the 5th string, open. And I'm just bouncing. I've got my 1st finger anchored on the 2nd fret of the 4th string. And I'm just bouncing back and forth on the 4th frets of the 4th and the 5th string. I can do that. I can do that. There's a lot of variations, melodic variations you can do there. So the whole thing, let's take it all the way to that point. So this is the Don't Start Me Talking rhythm, we'll call it that. Here we go. Whoops. There we go. Now there's a lot of little tricks and variations you can throw into that. I'm just playing the bare bones, simple idea. So basically you're taking a boogie woogie type run and just playing it slowly and steadily. Now the 5, there's lots of different ways you can do the 5. You can do it with a chord, you can walk into it, and when you listen to these Sonny Boy recordings, you hear a lot of different ways. So I'm going to try to show you as many different ways as I can for wrapping up the end of a section here. So let's take it from the 5. Then into our stop time if we were playing the original song. So what I'm doing here, I'm going to walk it up. So it's open 6th string, 4th fret, open 5th string, 1st, 2nd fret. Then if I play the chord, I'm playing a B7. So if you're the guitar player and that's what you're playing, sometimes if you got another guitar player with you, he might play the chords, you might just stay on the bass lines. So I'll show you one way to do each of them. B7th chord, make sure you know what that is. I'm just hitting really the top 3 strings of that chord. keep that bass sound. So I've got my first finger, to make the chord itself, my first finger is on the first fret of the 4th string, my second finger is on the 2nd fret of the 5th string, and my ring finger is on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. It's just an abbreviated B7th chord, and I'm sliding up, down from the 3rd to the 2nd fret. Now another way I could do that is with a kind of a bass run. I could do that same walking 5, so watch. I'm going to go back into the 1. So what I'm doing is just the same walking bass. Then I'm just going to roll this. Open, 5th string, 1, 2, open. Or you could slide it like that with just your first finger or whatever finger works for you on the 5th fret, going from the 1st to the 2nd, or the 5th string, 1st to the 2nd fret. Like that. So that is a standard rhythm, and you'll hear this a lot in Sonny Boy's playing. Behind him, that's what the first guitar or whatever, the second guitar is playing on a lot of the stuff. Something like that. Now there's tons of variations that you can throw in there, and that's what we're going to work on. I'm going to show you all these licks, and then it's up to you, creatively to try to use them. And it just makes your playing so much more interesting. If you're playing behind a harmonica player especially, it's a way of really providing a solid background for the harmonica player to play over. And a lot of guys don't know how to do this, or aren't willing to do this, so I'm trying to show you that. And that's characteristic of so many of the old blues stuff, Little Walters, Sonny Boy Williamson. Another variation is when he's playing the 1. So let's go to the 1 and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So we're in the key of G. He does like that same roll, the same one. You can do that same exact pattern just on the 4th string before you head into the 4. So let me do it again. So when you get to the end of that first part of the 1, you can do this. And I think if I listen to these recordings a ton, and there's a couple times where he does something like this. He does kind of a different rhythmic variation on that same idea. But he's inserting that lick at the end of the first run on the 1 chord. So one more time. What he's doing there. So that is the Don't Start Me Talking version. If you listen to that tune by Sonny Boy, it's in the key of G, and that's my reference for this song. Get on YouTube, if you have these on CD or something, listen to them. Because of copyright laws, I can't play them for you here. Now in just a minute, we're going to move to another tune. And this is a variation of that same theme, and I'm going to show you some different kinds of stuff you can do with that. Another variation of that same rhythmic pattern, you can hear it in a song called Born Blind, or it's sometimes called Eyesight to the Blind. It's played in the key of F, and so I've taken my capo and moved it up to the 1st fret, so I'll be playing that E position down there, and let me show you what I'm talking about. See if you can listen and hear the slight rhythmic and melodic variation on this version of the same type of rhythm. Now that, if you listen carefully, is what you hear as the basic pattern for the song Born Blind. A lot of variations he throws in, whether it's Luther Tucker or Lockwood playing this, I don't know, probably Luther Tucker. And when he's playing this, you'll hear a lot of little nuances, little variations in that pattern. But let's learn the basic pattern first. As before, we're starting out with the open F, which is our 6th string. Everything else there is the same, and then you get that odd sound, and if you listen really carefully to the recording, the chest recording, that's what he's doing. So I'm going with my pinky down to the 5th fret of the 5th string. Instead of going to the 4th fret, and then I'm moving everything over a string, doing the same thing. Then to the 4. Then on the 5, doing that cool walk in. Instead of playing this, I'm going the other way. So I start here on the 2nd fret of the 6th string, 4th fret, open 5th string, 1st fret, 2nd fret of the 5th string, then open 5th string, 4th fret of the 6th string, 2nd fret, like that. And then I can wrap it up with my little 7th chord. Another chord you can use in that situation, and that you'll hear a lot on the Sonny Boy recordings, is a 9th chord. And once again, if you're the only guitar player, you could throw that chord in. If you don't know how to play that second position 9th chord, check out my video on 9th chords and learn how to play that. And another thing, just like we did before, we can do that little roll there on the 5th string, or we can slide into it. Or here's another variation where he just keeps the pattern going. So when he gets to the turnaround, let me play the from the 5 down and then through the turnaround. So here we go. See how I did that? I didn't really come to a stop, I just kept on playing. And then into the next verse, 1. So all I did is, let me do that all the way through. When I get here, open 5th, then into the 1. Whoops. Just like that. And that's a variation. Something else that you'll hear Sonny Boy's guitar players do when they play this kind of rhythm is they'll double up the bass, or not really tremolo pick, but kind of rapid pick the bass at any point in the pattern. A lot of times you hear it on the 5s. You'll hear something like this. And that is just play the same thing and just double up the picking. Whoops, a little sloppy there, sorry. You could do that anywhere in the pattern and it sounds a little different. And you could do it on the 1 chord. Whoops, let me try it again. Just be creative, but I don't think you hear that on the Sonny Boy recordings. But that's the idea, especially when he's coming to the 5. That seems to be where the guitar players will use that quite a bit. So that concludes at least the first part of the single string rhythm. Now I'm going to show you another variation of the single string rhythm, and this time it's over a slower tune. This is called Like Wolf. It's a tune where Sonny Boy does his best imitation of Howlin' Wolf, another chess artist. It's in the key of F, and listening to it I can't tell whether or not there's a capo. I'm pretty sure there is, but I'm not positive, so I'm going to show you the two ways that I think he could be playing this. And the first one, in F, here's the pattern without the capo. Turnaround. You could put a turnaround in there. So it's a real simple idea. Now whether he's playing it with a capo or without. Without the capo, this is my F. I use my thumb a lot since I play acoustic finger picking blues, and you use your thumb. You could use other finger combinations, but I find the thumb easier to get that note. So here's my 1. And I'm sliding from the 2nd to the 3rd fret on the 4th string, 3rd, and I'm going 3rd and 1st fret. Then I'm coming down on the 3rd fret of the 5th string to the 1st fret of the 4th string, or 3rd fret of the 5th string, 1st fret of the 4th string, and then back. So like this. That's the basic pattern. If you listen to the tune, he just goes, then immediately to the 4, which is the B flat, or the B flat chord. Just repeats the same pattern on the same strings down here around the 6th fret. Back to the 1. C, which is the 5 chord. And that's the idea. Now if we could do that in any key, we could also take the capo and put it on there. This is what he could be doing. Which might be easier because you don't have to move up the fret. So it's open 6th string, then the 2nd fret of the 4th string, then I'm bouncing back and forth on the 5th string between the 2nd fret and the 6th of the 5th fret, now that I have the capo on. So like this. No open strings there except for that kickoff. Just move everything over and back to the 1. Now to play the 5 with the capo, we could go. So this is which would be my C note. I'm coming to the 4th fret of the 3rd string, going all the way down here to the 8th fret of the 4th string, and bouncing back and forth between the 8th and the 4th fret. 7th fret and the 4th fret. So. That's one way you could do it. You could also, for a bassier sound, go to the C. So here's my C note, which is going to be 7th fret. That's with the capo. And I'm sliding to what would be the 9th fret. 1, 2, 3, sorry, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 9th fret. Down here on the 5th, so I'm on the 9th fret of the 4th string. The 12th fret to the 9th fret of the 5th string. So the whole thing. And I could even repeat that over or the B flat chord, which would be here, but that's a couple different ways you could do that pattern. So I could go. You know, you might be playing the B flat like this, and then going back there. I don't know, but that's the idea. That is the pattern there. So there's another slow blues pattern that you can play. Now, another one that I've got comes from a tune called Trust My Baby. And in that tune, or I got a right to trust my baby, it's got a long title to it. And that's a really slow tune. So here's an example of a single string rhythm over a really slow tune. It's in the key of G. So once again, let's explore the options of playing with and without a capo. So it's a slow tune, and the pattern goes like this. Sorry. You can wrap it up in any way you want. Without the capo, what I'm doing is going from the songs in the key of G, so the 3rd fret of the 6th string, and again we're hesitating a beat, 2. So it's 1, 2, 4, like that. So I'm going between the 2nd fret and the 5th fret of the 5th string. So that first part, then I'm going to the 3rd fret of the 4th string, and then to the 5th fret of the 5th string. 1, 2, 3. That's really it. I can go down to the C when I go to the 5 or the 4, and just play the same pattern with my 8th fret 6th string as my root, my C. Back to the 1. Something like that. And that's a really cool kind of turnaround, or bass pattern that you can play behind the slower tune. You hear some guys double up on that. I'll show you. So if you want to add a little more oomph to it, what I'm doing is doubling up. So instead of just playing on the 1, playing the 3rd fret of the 4th string, I'm getting the 3rd and the 2nd string. Playing a double stop. Fills it up a little more. Go to the C. And there you go. Now those are all single string patterns. And if you want to hear those, I would listen to songs like Don't Start Me Talking, Born Blind. There's one called Let Your Conscience Be Your Guide, which has some single string runs in it. There's all kinds of his tunes that have these in them. Slower tunes, the one I showed you was Like Wolf, and there's also one called Trust My Baby. Now one last pattern that I'll show you with the single string runs is from a tune called Good Evening Everybody. And he plays the single string rhythm, this time in C, and I don't think he's using a capo on this one. Could be. But here's how he does it. I'm going to play in the key of C. The ending, the 5 there, you could play a chord, you could play a 7th or a 9th, or we'll get into that a little bit later. So what I'm doing is playing that boogie pattern down here on the C. So I'm starting on the 8th fret of the 6th string, the 7th, and the 10th fret of the 5th string, 7th fret of the 4th string to the 8th fret. There's a variation. I can go down to the 10th fret, do something like that on the 1. So let me play it all the way through. Now here on the 4, he's going to the F, which is the 8th fret of the 5th string, 7th fret of the 4th string, 8th, 9th, and 10th. Just like that, so you get a different pattern. Then when he goes to the 5, he repeats that. So that chromatic run where he's just going from the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th frets, that's he only does over the 4 and the 5 on this particular tune. Then back to the 1 with the chord ending. There's another bass rhythm for you. So you can take all those different patterns, you can combine them, and you can also mix them up with some double string bass rhythms, which is the next part of this lesson, the next section that we're going to get into here in just a minute.